I generally give two names. And occasionally, if somebody is very desirous of either girl or a boy, by way of good omen and wish to Allah, sometimes I give one name. Because it's sort of prayer that Allah, I am giving her one name, so you please also give her that particular sex. But in that case, most often, that works. But I can't do it in every case. I can't decide it. Sometimes in the scene of the moment it comes to me. But there is a third thing which is very important. Many a time it has happened that by mistake I have given one name. Without realizing that I have done it, I wrote one name and forgot the second one. And in such cases, without fail, it was always the same sex of which I have given the name. It never changed. Once, for example, in Germany, last year, there a non-Ahmadi boy came to me and told me that he wanted to have, he was expecting a child. So I gave him the boy's name and forgot to give him the girl's name. And after that I realized why he was still there. So I knew it had come, so I let it be. Now when the time of delivery came, this non-Ahmadi boy started betting with his non-Ahmadi friends that you see there is going to be a boy because it was named beforehand and it was a boy. So this sort of experience has repeated so many times that you can't call it a coincidence. But when I do it, occasionally I have done it consciously by way of expressing a wish or a prayer. And sometimes I write to them that this is only a wish, don't take it differently. But in those cases too, more often than not, it is the same sex. But then you can't decide positively. The Ahmadis should not start taking a stance. Should not start taking the stance that this is from Allah a definite verdict and it is going to be fulfilled like that. They must first ask me before starting on this course why I did it. If I tell them it was a dream from Allah, if I tell them it was a decision of the moment without my control, then there is a possibility of course. But unless somebody is positively told by Allah, this issue of betting and things, this is just sentimental and I don't advise it. Because there is always a risk. Allah is of course the owner, the proprietor and master. You can't order him about. If he doesn't desire to fulfill your wish, he is at liberty to do that. So if that happens and Ahmadis have started debating and betting on this issue, what fate they will be left with if it's not it's the other way around and it's not that sex which had been predicted. So they must ask first. They shouldn't make that mistake of claiming and asserting that this is what's going to happen. And one thing, another thing, I will explain a few other cases, some interesting ones. Yes, in the business of names, it also sometimes happens that I put a name, give a name to a boy or a girl in a manner as I have never done before. And in those cases, it was definitely guided by Allah because later on it came to pass that it was not just an accidental decision. I'll quote two examples. One belongs to here, the case belongs to India. Somebody wrote to me to give a name to his boy. The boy was born, of course. His name was Bhatti. So instead of giving the name Khalid bin Walid, I was about to do that when I suddenly, I don't know why, I said Tariq bin Walid and wrote it. Now naturally Khalid bin Walid comes to mind. But on that scene I remember I was on the verge of giving that name, and then my mind shifted to Tariq, and I sent him the letter that named him Tariq bin Walid. And his most surprised letter came later on and said that 6 months before this, I had dreamed that Allah had given me a son, and when I asked you for name, you say it is Tariq bin Walid. And I'm surprised. I said, why it should be Khalid bin Walid? Why Tariq bin Walid? And here it is. I'm surprised how it happened. So once here I read the original letter, all the original letters entirely. In Rabba, there was a gist prepared, and I first read the gist. Then from that I guessed that certain letters were worthy of reading entirely. They may have some more which might have been missed by the person who has prepared the gist. So it was a reasonable percentage from one of the letters were read by me later on. First I read the list and the summary. Then I shifted to the letters which I had marked and then read them. So in one case, somebody had written to me that a boy was born to her daughter, or perhaps son, I don't remember. And she wants me to give a name. Now that was in the summary, nothing more. So that time I gave him a name which I had never given to anyone else before. That was the first time that name was given. And then I turned to the original letter and read it, and that part had been missed by the person who had prepared the summary. And that was most surprising. The woman had written that it is up to you to give any name, but in a dream I had seen these two names. So please, I should prefer it to be one of the two. And that was one of the two. It was not an ordinary name. The combination was extraordinary, as I have told you. I told the private secretary to check the list, and he told me later on, after checking the list, that never before had this name had been given to anybody.
What was the name of that?
I don't remember, otherwise I could have told you. You can write to Mullah Sahib and find out. So that was a very interesting case. After that perhaps I have been giving, but never before that. So that shows that deviation, and that thought couldn't be accidental, it's impossible. There are all the cases I should have given that name to that mother who had seen in the dream that this was the name. So these things have repeated so often that for Ahmadis to believe in God is not to believe in a myth or a theory. It is such a living God that it exists with you, along with you. You are not certain, he is certain. Yes, please.
Children are
Bashir. Yes, please, Mansoor Saab.